Hello, my name is Aaron, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Quantum Photons. This podcast is also available in video form on YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/adelayedteacher, and it will be available there in video form. If you don't mind listening to this in a podcast style without the visuals, feel free to continue listening, and we appreciate you listening to our podcast. Welcome to the Quantum Photons. My name is Aaron.
And I'm Stefan.
And this is the program for today. Today, it's going to be a bit of an intermix. We're gonna basically build a warp core of ideas and put it in the intermix chamber and see how that goes for us. There's no promises if we will have a warp core breach by the end of the show, or if we'll have a functional, powered starship to journey through the stars. But the point of it is, we're gonna put it together today. So the question of the day that we've been kind of talking about off air is two questions. And in the audience, if you're interested, you can follow along and comment on the YouTubes or send us an email if you're listening on the audio portion. The question is twofold. What is your favorite planet? And number two, what is your favorite Star Trek theme song / intro credit sequence? I will go first because I foisted this upon Stefan early, and he had to think through it, and I don't want to rush him, and I don't want to take advantage. So, my favorite planet, and it's not actually a planet, so I'm cheating, is the moon. I love the moon because it has such a fascinating relationship with Earth. If we didn't have the moon, we would be in trouble because it affects our gravity, it affects our tidals, it has such an impact on us together with the sun, and the duality of those two celestial beings is just really interesting to me in how we depend so much on both of those things for our continued life and our ability to live and exist and not be affected by these random tidal waves that would just destroy us. So that's my planet. I know it's a cheat. My second answer that is it's not a planet either. My favorite planet, which has been exiled from the list of planets, is Pluto, because Pluto is a planet. Pluto deserves justice. Pluto was robbed. Pluto was mistreated. There was no accountability in the process. I'm sure there was, but I don't really care. My logic is sound. I reject your reality and insert my own. So Pluto should never have been kicked out. I get why we did it, but it's also just come on. Let him back in. He's Pluto. He's still sitting out there all
professional dissertation you have of why Pluto should come back.
Oh, I will write it. Hear me now. I will write it. It will be. I will send it to.
It because you said it would be one of the topics on the podcast. It's literally one of the first things you said.
I'm taking my letter to the Johnson Space Center. I don't know who's in charge of the planets. I guess NASA maybe.
Probably NASA headquarters in DC. But
yeah, NASA headquarters. Dear NASA headquarters, how dare you remove Pluto? Pluto was a planet when I was a young student, a young child, and I will hold on to Pluto as my planet of choice.
That letter will be looked at and thrown away immediately.
It won't even be looked at. They'll just scan it. They'll X-ray it and go, "We know what's in here. It says Pluto. Toss it." Doesn't matter if it's a scientific discovery that's going to cure cancer. No, Pluto gone into the Pluto file, which is the big old trash can. So Star Trek series, the intro and the music that I love. It's a tie. It's a tie between Deep Space Nine and Voyager. Deep Space Nine, I think, crawls ahead of it because, and remind me, Stefan, if I'm speaking incorrectly, but Deep Space Nine is the one with the French horns, correct?
Yes.
I played the French horn when I was in middle school and for a little bit in high school before I went into theater and realized that my future was not in marching band or in band. But the sound of the French horn is so regal and so powerful that as the DS9 music swells and those French horns are just going to town on that song, there is something powerful about an intro sequence that just works. A lot of modern television doesn't have intro sequences or introduction themes anymore. It's just a quick, ba 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 ba, here we go. And while I understand why, I disagree. I think the power of that is it sets the tone. It sets the tone for the show. It's a reminder of what amazing greatness we're about to witness. It brings in that Star Trek vibe, for the lack of a better word, or aesthetic, perhaps is the more appropriate term. But yeah, Deep Space Nine with that theme song, Voyager for the imagery alone, as Voyager's like going through the gas and the sky, and just I love the views and how Voyager presents it. What I love about each of those shows is they took the aesthetic of the Star Trek original series and the Next Generation intro kind of dynamic, and they made it their own. And there's power in that. I'm not going to speak to Enterprise because I know it is a tired, tropey argument about Star Trek Enterprise and the intro sequence and the faith of the heart that got to go so hard. So yeah, that's my judgment statement on the Star Trek, on my favorite, on my top one with one slightly below it in excellence. And now, Stefan, it is your turn to proclaim your favorite planet and why, and your favorite Star Trek show theme intro thing, whatever.
So my planet is not one you know, I guarantee, because it's not actually. Okay. I guess I'd be cheating technically because it's a dwarf planet.
We're cheaters, okay? We just cheese. We cheese and cheat our way through this. It's fine. Everything's fine.
It's just a dwarf planet, but it is a planet. I learned about it in my NASA class that I took. I had to actually research this place. It's called Ceres. It is very interesting.
Okay.
The specific area that I learned about was Akator Crater, which has a bunch of deposits in it, so to speak, that are very cold. The planet is very cold. And NASA is potentially looking at missions to go there and explore more. They've done some. In fact, my professor that I'm currently taking Introduction to Space Studies, his whole dissertation was on Ceres. So I was like, all right. I was like, Professor, do you want to read our final report, our review that we did for this project? He said, yes, 100%. So I sent it to him, and he was like, that was great. Like, that was really good. He said, you guys presented it well, and the crater that you picked was really well. So I guess Ceres has a special place in my heart because, I had to learn about it and I had to be part of making a mission of what could be possible to there. But I wouldn't say the moon would be cheating. I mean, technically,
right.
We want to colonize it, and technically, what do you do with planets? You colonize them. So
colonize,
I'll give you that one. Now, if you said the sun, we'd have had a problem because that's out there.
It's technically a star, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay. See, I know my science. I know things.
Well, I'm joking.
That was a very odd little bob of the head that I did there, but.
Well, the people on audio won't see it. It's okay.
It's fine. Yeah, you audio folks are missing out on the madness of the video.
Right.
Oh my gosh, Stefan pulled out a whatever, His house is on fire. It's not actually on fire. It's not on fire. That's not happening.
Wow. So
there you go. Oh yeah. Now Star Trek.
Yeah.
Music and Star Trek intro.
Yes. So I'm with you actually. Deep Space Nine is my favorite.
Yeah.
I love the intro to it. I love the music. I love just how they did it. The aesthetic of Deep Space Nine. Yeah. As a show as well, I just really enjoyed it. And Voyager, the intro to it really got me, like you said, when the ship's flying through the gas and, just that look, that aesthetic of it. And you're like, this show has some very interesting things in it when it portrays these things. So, it would be between those two. DS9 definitely has top pick for me when it comes to my favorite music. Voyager's not too far behind. Enterprise is Enterprise. I'm like
faith of the heart.
And it's funny because you quote that to people and people are like, what are you talking? If they don't know Star Trek, they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm just like, oh.
Well, so I freely admit that it has grown on me only because for whatever reason, Spotify, which I'm sure it's a conspiracy theory, every so often when I'm listening to my big old love playlist, it has like 3,000 songs. At least once or twice a week, Faith of the Heart just kicks in, and I'm just like, I have to listen to this. Like I feel like guilty if I go, no, I'm not listening to this, because it's Star Trek. And again, it's very tropey to have this argument. I'm not going to have an argument about that, about the show music. It was a daring experiment in Star Trek. Like, it was like, we're going to do something different. This is the thing about Star Trek that we all know and love about Star Trek fans of all along the spectrum, right? Star Trek fans have views and they have feelings, and a dedicated core of them have feelings about Enterprise and the theme song. I think for the lumps that Star Trek Enterprise takes, because it does, there's a few lumps that it does deserve. The series finale among them is the biggest lump that they should have to take, and I think even the guys who were producing it and the production team in recent years has apologized and been like, yeah, that was a cheap ending. That wasn't the right way to do that. They've also, I think, apologized for Star Trek Generations and killing Captain Kirk, but that's a whole other issue and a whole other show.
Yeah, completely different.
But science fiction television shows and movies struggle sometimes with good story and good stuff. So there's always that, like, hey, is it going to end well, or is it not going to end so much? Stargate for the longest time was amazing. I loved that show, still love it. Stargate Universe, again, there's divided opinions on that show, and that's a lot of, like, the traditional Stargate that we saw was not what Stargate Universe was giving us, which, again, you may love it, you may not love it, but that's the beauty of science fiction, is it can take many forms. Right. So, go ahead.
One thing, I gotta correct you for last week. It was brought to my attention.
Oh yes.
The astronaut in the Challenger explosion was not the person you said. It was actually Krista
McAuliffe, yeah. Sally Ride is actually an actress.
Yes.
I don't know why Sally Ride got stuck in my head.
Well, see, when we were doing it, my brain was like, okay, I'm just thinking, Challenger things.
No, no. Here we go. Sally Ride was an American astronaut, but she was her death was natural. She died at the age of 61 in California. Yeah. So. She was assigned to it, but she was in 1985. She was assigned to the crew of shuttle mission 61M, but the mission training was halted in January 1986 after the Challenger exploded shortly after takeoff. So she served on the presidential commission investigating the tragedy. So she lived a life. Unfortunately, she died rather young. But so Sally Ride was a real astronaut. I'm thinking of an actress with a Sally Field. Sally Field is who I'm thinking about.
Well,
but yes, I got it wrong.
Like you said, but I was like, wait, my mind didn't think about it.
Wrong mission.
Was like, that's not right. I'm like, oh, okay, well, we'll make sure and fix that.
Yeah, wrong mission.
Mistakes. We're not perfect.
Wrong mission. So we do, and we're probably going to make more of them as we go. So buckle up, get your pencils out, and let's write them down. Here we go. And we'll do that every episode. If we get called out, we'll basically run a segment going, the things we got wrong and that we didn't research well enough. Our hope is that list will go. Yeah. We'll work to condense and make that list slow or smaller. All right. So when we come back, we're going to do some game talk. We're going to talk about some video games. We have Aliens on the bucket list, but we may mention them a little bit. But next week we are absolutely going to dig into Aliens. It just felt like this week maybe, hey, let's take a talk into some sci-fi and even just some regular old video games, just for the heck of it. We'll talk about science connected to some of this, because obviously some of these are going to be science fiction games and what they got right and what they got wrong. So yeah, we're going to do a little bit of that. So we'll be right back here in just a moment here on the Quantum Photons. So stick with us. Grab a cup of tea. If you're a captain of coffee or a captain of tea or a captain of other beverages, feel free to partake and stick with us. We'll be back after this. right, welcome back to the Quantum Photons. My name is Aaron.
And I'm Stefan.
That's Stefan on the other side. So today we were kind of game planning a little bit before this, and we had originally planned to talk about aliens. We're still going to mention them a little bit and kind of preview next week, but we were looking at our list of computer games that we both own, and we're like, hey, let's make a list of the good, the bad, and the coming soon. And a lot of these games are actually very sci-fi, which is interesting that we both have well, it's not interesting. It's kind of a cool little, like, we're both sci-fi fans. We both enjoy it. So our goal today when we talk about these video games is we're going to focus in on some of the sci-fi elements, and we're going to talk about how those games get science fiction right, or how they get space right, or how they really get it wrong. So that'll be interesting to do. Starting off with, I want to talk about No Man's Sky because it's my favorite. We'll do a No Man's Sky and Starfield comparison because in the good category, good to great category, is No Man's Sky. And then in the not so great territory is Starfield. And Starfield is not that hard. It's been done ad nauseum on YouTube. People talking about how boring Starfield is. How many hours did you have on it, Stefan?
16 hours, I believe.
Okay. And I had 30. So we were talking about this earlier about how our impressions of the game. Yours was 16 hours in, mine was 30 hours in. And you're like, well, I kind of gave it a try, but I might want to try more. And my response to you was, it's not worth it. It is not worth the additional 15 hours you have to put in to get to it. There's no question Starfield is a not a great game. It's not well designed. It's taking a gaming engine that has been tried, tested, and broken from Fallout 4 to Fallout 76. It began in Skyrim all those years ago, and they called it, oh no, it's Creation Plus. It's not Creation Plus. It's Creation Bleh. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to use an old gaming system which fits into their RPG systems and designs of how a Bethesda game is supposed to work. However, you had Skyrim, you had Fallout. None of those games involved space travel. No. You had your open world. You went from point A to point B, and the world was open, and it was very much explorable and engageable, and the loading screens were just when you went into a bigger building, whatever. It was very minimal. So you have that mechanic, and it was a worry of a lot of folks when Bethesda was like, we're doing a new game. And they're like, okay, a new IP, great, this is interesting. What's it going to be? And they went, in space! Oh, okay. You've never done that before. Your engine, I don't know if it's going to pull that off, but okay, all right, well. And so a lot of the lead up to Starfield was a lot of skepticism. There's a YouTuber on YouTube, his name is Luke Stevens. Cool guy. Love him to death. Love watching him. He has a shirt like active, like high skeptic or whatever, big skeptic, whatever. So he's skeptical of a lot of games, and he was very skeptical of Starfield. And he was like, guys, they're promising a lot, but this is Bethesda we're talking about. This is the Fallout 76 Bethesda that has never really truly come out from underneath that really bad experience. And so it came out, and there was some fanboys who were like, yeah, it's great, it's awesome. And then it started to drop. People stopped talking about it. People started to turn on Starfield because they realized you can't take a Skyrim or a Fallout engine and put it in space. It is not a functional connective system or game that does what you need it to do. You end up just being in a bunch of loading screens. That's the crux of Starfield, and that's the part that is really hard because it looks good. They spent a lot of time on designing little pieces and parts, but they didn't spend as much time on actually making it a unique experience from start to finish. The obvious comparison, No Man's Sky. And Stefan, you've played No Man's Sky.
Not quite as much as you have, I'm sure, but yes, I have.
Okay.
Played it.
What is like the bit you've played? What was your impression?
So before I answer that, I don't know if you know this or not, but they actually took most of the Starfield copies of the physical copy of games out of Walmart. You actually cannot buy a physical copy of Starfield anymore. It's only in digital form. So that's a fun thing. But anyhow, I thought you'd enjoy that little tidbit. No Man's Sky. You're welcome. No Man's Sky. Yes. So obviously, it has a different look and a different aesthetic than Starfield, but the core element of what it does extremely, extremely well. The exploration of planets. Getting on your ship, hopping on your ship, and leaving the planet and going to a different planet to explore more. To build and continue. The game is it's very well done. The developers of that game are 100% in constant updates of the game. They talk to their community, they listen to their community, they make sure the community knows what's going on. And that's the signs of good game developers. When they listen to the people that play their game, because they're the ones that ultimately know everything. If you talk to a gamer about a game, they're going to tell you the good, they're going to tell you the bad. And a good developer should take that criticism, whether it's good or not, and they need to take it and actually use it. And that's exactly what the developers of No Man's Sky does. They have done some amazing updates. I haven't played the game in a while, but I have a buddy who plays it. He's played a lot of it. And he gushed and gushed about it, and I was like, all right, I'll try it out. And I've like I said, I've not played a ton of it. Unfortunately, being a college student takes a lot of time, and I don't get a game as much as I used to. But he told me about it, and I was like, all right, I'll try it out. I'll test it. So I took a chance, and like I said, it's a beautiful game. The graphics of it are great. The performance of it runs great. It doesn't have issues. They continue to optimize it. They continue to update it. There's not really anything bad you can say about the game. If you look at reviews, the majority of reviews for that game are positive. And a lot of that is because of what the developer has done to make it better. They've listened to their community. They've done what the community wanted. And they're continuing to refine it to what the community wants. And I think No Man's Sky is superior to Starfield in that manner. Because like you said, Starfield,
absolutely,
it was built in a broken engine. I mean, honestly, like one of the biggest complaints that I had, and I talked to people about this, was the fact that when you traverse from your ship into space, it's a loading screen. That is so disappointing.
Yep.
In games nowadays, with the technology and the graphics and the ability and the performance, you should be able to take a ship from a planet, put it up into the sky, and let you see that transition. You shouldn't have to see a loading screen every time. You transition from the surface to space, from one planet to another, from one galaxy to another. One game that does that really well is Elite Dangerous. You've probably never played it, but it's made different. Have you?
I've played a little of it. I've played a little of it, but it's very it's overwhelming at a certain. I'm just like, okay, this is too much.
When you jump from one planet to another, you actually see. You don't go into a loading screen. You go into kind of like what you would see in Star Trek, the warp. You go into that slip space drive, I think is what they call it. And you see the stars go past, and then you come out like, boom, right there. And that's what Starfield needs, and it doesn't have. That's one of those things that I've heard a big thing is the traversal of the ship, and it's disappointing. I mean, Starfield had a ton of potential as a space game. Bethesda, they're not the greatest. They have their issues, but they've also made some solid strides in some of their games that people really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I think if they would have, again, if they would listen to their community better, Starfield could be way better. And they're promising these updates that are going to help with that, but we'll see. I don't hold my breath. And
and what's interesting, so when you talk about the feedback and listening to the gamers or listening to their customers, there were actual Starfield either reps or devs who went into reviews and started talking back and down to their reviewers and to the customers. And it was just, I think it may have been marketing people doing this, but that was their solution to the problem was, we're going to tell you how it really is, or tell you how you're wrong, like passive aggressively / whatever. And it was like, again, the trope of YouTube got a hold of that and said, what is wrong with Bethesda? Like the choices you're making are the choices that if you were sitting down and you were to review the choices and you were to look at the pros and the cons of each, you would never do the thing you just did. You would go, let's do what we should do as a gaming company and do this the right way.
Sadly, and I hate to be the person to say this, but I think a lot of that falls on Todd Howard, honestly. Truthfully.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, when you watch videos and people say, thanks, Todd Howard, or they make the comment, it just works. When you're making fun of a game producer, developer, you know there's a problem. And it's just like, I forget what it was. It was actually Starfield. It was someone playing Starfield. And every time there was a problem, they would cut in that trope of Todd Howard saying, it just works.
Just works.
And it doesn't.
20 times the detail.
It does not work. Like, as an aside, Bethesda's going to be part of a new game coming out, but they're not the actual ones making the game. It's being made by Machine Games. It's the Indiana Jones game. And because there's so little actual, interaction of Todd Howard with the game, I'm actually promising for that game, because it was made by the people that made Wolfenstein, The New Order, and the New Colossus. Those games were great. They were well received. They did very well for what they were. And I think that being as the company has done that before, they know what they're doing. And of course it's going to be under the Bethesda trope, because I think Machine Games is under Bethesda. But Bethesda's not making the game. They're not making, like they did Starfield, they're not making this game. So the potential of it to do better is way higher because of who's making it. And I hate to bash Bethesda. Like, they're very innovative. They've done a lot of cool things over the years with the games, but they just they don't have it.
Well, I think here's the thing though. I think we're seeing this now with a lot of companies. So the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game released a couple days ago, and universally, reviews from IGN, from Luke Stevens, a bunch of other gamers that I watch, and game reviewers, has been universally negative, that the game was just, what were they thinking? Why was this? Who is this for? Really odd choices in narrative choices. And it's a full price game. And they said the single player experience is only maybe 20 hours long. And then there's supposed to this game is in the kind of in the scheme of a lot of other live service games that are supposed to have long lifelines. So the idea here was you would play this in the end game, and then you would do multiplayer, and it would be supported by live service, and this would bring in the money, but it would extend the life of the game, because you would play it, you would go back to play it again and again and again, because the experience that they were offering was worthy of that. But the reviews that were coming through were saying, I don't want to go back and play this again because there's no real reason to. There's nothing motivating me to suit up and get back in. Some odd narrative choices with how the Justice League characters are treated. Spoiler alert, the reason why it's Kill the Justice League is because Brainiac has taken control of the Justice League through mind control and is using them to destroy the world. And so the Suicide Squad has to be the good guys and stop them, and they have to kill them in the end. And the way that they choose to kill certain members of the Justice League have been, at a minimum, odd, and at worst, offensive. Things that we won't talk about on this podcast, but it's there's certain ways that they did that was why would you do that? And it feels like they're, to your conversation, a lot of game companies are just, they don't understand their audience. They don't understand their gamers. They don't understand their players. They're making these games and they're coming out and it's just this is junk. The Day Before, which was a post-apocalyptic zombie game, there was skepticism across the board on that game, and it finally released within a 72-hour game, within a 72-hour period of the game hitting Steam and going live and being able to purchase. In 72 hours, the game studio shut down.
Yep.
Because it was so bad.
Yep.
You have this situation with Suicide Squad. This is the studio that put out all the Arkham games. This is the studio that put those three Batman Arkham games that were incredible masterpieces of gameplay, of fighting, of all the mechanics in that game. And this studio, this is the best they've got since then, and it's been a few years. So it's not just, I don't think it's just a Bethesda issue. I think it's a gaming industry problem, because they're putting, like, Greedfall, the game we talked about, was put out a couple years ago. It was pretty underwhelming. Redfall, which was an absolute disappointment beyond any kind of measure. But there have been so many disappointments that have come out, and you're just like, and these are big. These are not small-time independent studios. These are big companies putting out absolutely worthless games.
It an independent studio?
Well, it was by Fantastics, yeah. But the thing about that is there was a lot of, like, hype leading up to it. Like, then they were hyping themselves up, and they were selling themselves off as a professional game company. Like, the trailers and the gameplay footage that we were given.
I saw that, yeah.
And then the comparison with what we got was like, you lied to us.
Right.
You absolutely lied to us. You sold us on something that absolutely doesn't exist. And then you tried to tell us, oh, well, we're going to improve it like everybody else does. But there was no, you couldn't even see the improvement. Yeah. And so there's been a lot of games where they've come out and it's like, this is not what the gamers wanted. And so yeah, it's Forspoken was another one. Forspoken was just like, nobody asked for this game. And the characters were irritating. You didn't care about the main character because the way she was written and the way she was put through the game and the mechanics was just disappointing. And so there seems to be this ratcheting up of poor game creation, and not, like I said, these are not independent studios. Some of these studios are award-winning, like, continual, like, have made great games in the past, but something's happened. And I wonder, this is a theory for now, and we can move on to the next thing, but I have a feeling, I don't even think it's a feeling, I think I could pretty much prove this if I really got into it, but the Battle Royale, MMO, churn and burn situation that is really driving a lot of these live service games to put in that multiplayer additional piece to extend the game's life, comes at a sacrifice of the narrative long-term game production. Whereas you could get a Skyrim with DLCs that really made for a deep and involving storyline that you do want to go back and play. I have gone back to Skyrim just this last month and a half, and I am playing back again with these storylines because it's satisfying to experience. It's satisfying to determine the direction your character goes. It's satisfying to see and hear and engage with that story because it's a well-done story. But there's not a lot of modern games that I would go back, like we were talking earlier, like Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Absolutely, I do go back and I dip my toes back in that game. I swim in its water because it is so narratively interesting. And the world is huge, and there's a varying amount of activities to do, and there's so much pieces and parcels, and the DLC is interesting. I mean, you get to go figure out Atlantis, and oh my gosh, the replay value is there because you can choose and pick and choose what you want to do. There is not a lot of games right now that are able to do that. Baldur's Gate 3 was the last real boom. This is an amazing narrative game, and people love it. And it scared everybody. When Larian Studios finally published Baldur's Gate 3 and took it out of early release, there were videos, there were tweets about game studios going, don't hold us to that standard. It's impossible. And it's like, it's not impossible if Larian Studios can pull it off. They're not an EA. They've managed it. How can they do it and you can't? And so there's just this angst, I think, in the gaming community where they're looking at these gaming companies and going, look, we know it can be done. Why aren't you doing it? Starfield, the thing about Starfield is No Man's Sky exists. If No Man's Sky didn't exist, Starfield would be the greatest game since sliced bread. But No Man's Sky exists. Therefore, Starfield is the lesser game because you can do so much in No Man's Sky. You can take off from a planet, go through the atmosphere, and fly to the moon. It's doable. And you can then... Nope, can't. You have to go through 16 different loading screens. That's hyperbole. I apologize. But it feels like it. It just feels like, okay, a loading screen to sit and share, a loading screen to pick on my map, a loading screen to lift off, a loading screen to enter space, a loading screen to go another place, a loading screen to land, a loading...
to put a pin in your conversation for a minute. You was talking about battle royale games. I am of the unpopular belief. I'm not a fan. I have not been a fan. I know that a lot of people play them. They have fun with them, but they've been done so much over and over and over and over and over again. And I'm just like, every time I see one, I'm like, really? Like, I have friends that play Fortnite. I won't touch that game. I just won't. It's not my game. I've played a little bit of Modern War. What is it? I forget. Whatever the Call of Duty one is. I've played a little bit of it with my brother, and that's a little different. But like, I just can't with all these battle royale. You've got Fortnite. You've got
there's Overwatch.
You've got. I can't remember the one I'm thinking.
Is Destiny 2 involved in that? I can't remember if Destiny 2 is a part of that.
I don't know that it would be considered.
Team Fortress 2.
Team Fortress. I can't think of the one that I'm thinking of, but like there's
it's
just
probably
so
the same one I am.
them. And I've played Overwatch. You know, it can be a fun game to play at times, but like I play it with friends. Let me premise that. I play it with friends. That's the only way I get replayability in games like that. The only game that I've really played big time is Paladins, and it's not even made by a big time studio. It's made by High Res Studios. And it's it was one of the best ones that I've seen. Like, I'm not into battle royale games when you play with.
Well, I think here's the thing. I think, and this is what I've realized. Buddy of mine, we do a gamers podcast as well. We had this realization: is we're too old, and it's not that we're old or elderly, but you get to a certain age and you age out of the Fortnite. And I mean, admittedly, Zoe on our Nerds by Screenlight podcast, she plays Fortnite and loves it, and there's no shame in that game. That's her release. That's her being able to go and just be here and have her fun. But overall, gamers of a certain age, when you get to a certain point where you can't play Fortnite for 15 hours, you can't sit down and do those battle royales that are going to take you 5 to 6 hours to play, and you just don't have the energy. There's just this thing about gaming as you get older that you leave behind. And I'm not going to, this is the wrong word, but it's the best word I can, like the childish games of old where you're like, okay, the battle royale is no longer fun. I no longer want to do that. I want to spend my time in an immersive game with an interesting story. That's what I kind of was talking about earlier. Like, I look for a game that's going to get me hooked, that's going to tell a story, I am allowed to engage with that story in that universe and move through it and influence it and take part in it. A big part of that, I've been watching you do God of War recently, and God of War is absolutely one of those games. It is a game that is story rich, that is absolutely deep and wide in its content. There is a lot to do in that game from start to finish, and it is something that pulls you forward. You want to keep playing because there's something else around that next bend. There's something around that next hallway. There's something through that next door. That's the power of a game that grabs you and won't let go. There haven't been a lot of games recently that have grabbed me and said, ooh, come along. It's more just like they push me away and they say, ha, you dropped $70 on me. Ha, sucker. And I'm like, well, that's not a way to win my heart. That's a way for me to not want to ever buy something from you again. So that's, I think, a lot of the modern gaming struggle is that you and I, well, I'm at least old enough, and you're probably old enough in this range to remember the good single player, the good games that were really, really strong. You probably were at the tail end of it. I've lived through the amazing times, the Command and Conquer days, all of those incredible like Doom and Quake and all the fun stuff. The original start of that and the reintroduction of that. There's a piece of gaming missing, and I don't want to say we're missing the fun, but there's an element of gaming that has been left behind in this new, I don't even want to call it like paradigm, but this new world that we're living in with gaming. So there you go. That's that. Which, anyway, there's a lot more we could talk about, but we've hit 38 minutes. Let's do some talk about aliens, because I feel like we've beaten the dead horse of gaming. I will tell you, we can talk about, actually, let's do this. Let's talk about two of the coming soons. I'll talk about Skull and Bones. We can both talk about it, and then you can talk about Star Wars Outlaws. So there's some hope on the horizon, but not much. Skull and Bones is the one that everyone is they're looking at it the same way they looked at Starfield, because Skull and Bones was born out of Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which was an amazing game and a beautiful game and just really rich in character, but you got to drive your ship around the Caribbean and do all kinds of awful and terrible and wonderful things. It was amazing. I loved Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and what was born out of that, of like people wanted a pirate game, and Ubisoft was like, "Oh, we have done that before. Let's do it again." And Ubisoft has got a Ubisoft, so of course they're going to train wreck it. So Skull and Bones has gone through development, and it seemed like it was stuck in developmental hell. And then finally, they're like, "Hey, we got a beta. Woo, look at it." And it was okay. But a lot of the reviewers were like, this is not what we were expecting. This is not what we were wanting. You're giving us Ubisoft Light almost with this game. So my impression of Skull and Bones, and you said it has a release date of February 16th. It's only available in the Ubisoft store, so of course can't be friendly and play with others. I am genuinely skeptical about what this is going to be, because I love me a sailing game. I love boat games. Back in the day, before it was a thing on Steam, I bought Ship Simulator. Like, I have the disc somewhere in my casing, and all these things. I have Flight Simulator, like all this fun stuff. And I don't know. I'm hopeful for Skull and Bones. And you actually played it, Stefan. So I'm curious to hear your perspective.
So, I don't know what all I can talk about. You sign an NDA and, all this stuff. But it surprised me, I guess you would say, like what gameplay I got to play. It just, like you said, it seems like it's lacking something. Now, like I said, they just had a beta not too long ago, but I actually wasn't able to do it because I was on a trip. So lucky me, I didn't get to see it or play it. But I'm skeptical of it, but I've also, I've watched some gameplay of it. I've watched their trailers, and I'm interested to see what happens, because this game has been in development for years. Absolute years. And at one point, we thought that it was completely done. It was gone. We didn't hear about it for 4 or 5 years. And then Ubisoft's finally like, "Oh yeah, by the way, you remember Skull and Bones?" I don't even think it was called Skull and Bones at that time. It was called something completely different, but they renamed it.
Yeah.
And it was like, "Oh, it still exists. Okay, so it is going to eventually come out." And they originally planned to release it last year. They had given it a release date of last year, and they're like, "Oh wait, nope, we can't do that. We got to push it." Which I'm okay with pushing a game back if it helps the game. If it helps the game, if it helps the game to be better on release, I am completely okay with extending a deadline of a game. As an example of that, Assassin's Creed Unity. That game was atrocious when it came out. Full of bugs. Absolutely horrible. Yeah. And it actually came to the point where Ubisoft fixed it and was like, "Oh, by the way, these people that played the game, we're giving you a free copy of another game just because we feel so bad about what you went through with Unity." And
the collective guilt was so much. They're like, "Here, have this."
I never played Unity fully, but I watched it when it first released, and it when you jump off a building and you just go straight down out of the map and you die, that is horrible. And unfortunately, that's another thing. Bethesda has their issues, Ubisoft has their issues. If Ubisoft works hard, they can make a solid game. Watch Dogs 2, one of my favorite Ubisoft games ever. I don't know if you've ever played it. It's so good.
So I have played Watch Dogs 2, and then I ordered Watch Dogs 3. Oh. Legion.
3, yes.
Legion.
Yes.
And it was a disappointment, and I am still mad. I haven't finished the game because the narrative, it was upsetting and awful and dumb, and there wasn't anything special about it.
No.
They went all in. Well, that's the thing about Ubisoft and a lot of these game companies. These are almost billion-dollar companies. And this is the dreck that they produce, and it's like, okay. And that's why I don't give them a lot of my money. I don't buy a lot of new games anymore, because I've been I've been hurt too much with like spending $70 on a pre-order, and
Well, see,
I haven't. Yeah.
I played Watch Dogs 1. I played it when it came out. Actually, that was a Christmas gift from my brother. He bought it for me for Christmas. And I was super excited for it because of the premise of it. It wasn't something we'd ever seen before. And Watch Dogs 1 was kind of bland, would be the word. Like, it didn't quite show what the trailer showed. And Ubisoft's been guilty of this before. But then Watch Dogs 2 came out. And I have played Watch Dogs 2 like 4 times. I have beat that campaign 4 times because the replayability of that campaign is good. That game actually has a very solid story. It's fun. It's enjoyable to play, and I will give them props for that one. Legion, bleh, no. I haven't beat it.
No.
I was upset, 100% upset. The premise of like changing to different people, and anyhow, that's a whole nother story entirely. On the other side of Ubisoft, you talked about Skull and Bones. There is a game that Ubisoft is coming out with. I think it's at the end of this year or the beginning of next. I don't remember the release date or the tentative release date. I don't know if they gave it. It's Star Wars Outlaws. I, as we learned, am a huge Star Wars fan, unlike you, who is very skeptical of Star Wars, which is okay. To each their own.
I have my reasons.
You do, but they're a very heated reason, and if I got on a call with you and another friend, there would be such fighting. Anyhow, but besides that, so Star Wars Outlaws is the first game that Ubisoft's made that's single play, like a single player experience that's not a Jedi. Outlaws is set. You're a scoundrel, pretty much. You're a smuggler, and you play that storyline. And they gave us a trailer of it. And I think the thing that impressed me the most is the fact that Ubisoft made a game, unlike Bethesda, who absolutely screwed it up. Ubisoft made a game where you take the ship from the planet and you transition to space and you see the whole thing. It's not a loading screen. It's a great transition. And if a game can pull that off, like for people that like science fiction games, space games, that is huge. To be able to see that transition from the planet into space, that's like one of the biggest things you want to see because that shows you the immersion of the game. And I'm excited for Outlaws. I don't know quite what's to come, but from what I saw of it, and from reviews from different gaming places, like bigger gaming places, the people are actually excited for it. So we'll see. If they don't put microtransactions in it, that would be great, which they didn't in Survivor or Jedi Knight Fallen Order, and those games were so well received.
Fingers crossed!
Those were EA games, and EA has a horrible affinity of, microtransactions. Let's talk about that.
I have special feelings for EA.
Battlefront 2.
And by special feelings, I mean not liking, not a fan.
Like I said, Battlefront 2. Yeah, I was working at Walmart when that occurred. That was a whole conversation with me and the electronics people because we all gamed. And of course, it got to the point where EA had to cut it because people were like literally reporting them for what they were doing. And I've since grown a little better with EA when I played Survivor and Jedi Knight Fallen Order. They have gotten some of my respect back because those games don't have microtransactions and they are solid games. They're really fun games. But we'll see. It's funny that both of the coming soon games were both Ubisoft. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
It'll be a contest to see.
About, obviously, if we want to. You did mention God of War, and I want to talk about it because obviously, Aaron said he's been watching me play it. In fact, Aaron watched me fight the hardest boss in the game. And his comment to me was, "How are you not rage quitting right now? I would already have thrown the controller and been done." And I was just like, back in the day, that's how I was. If that happened, I'd be so mad. I would be angry. But I've got to the point where I'm just like, all right, so this is going to happen. This is technically my fault that I'm not winning because I'm making a mistake. And I have to refine that mistake to do what needs to be done. So what was it, 10 attempts, I think? Somewhere in there?
Yep.
In 10 attempts, I beat the hardest boss on God of War. And I've had some friends that have let's just say 10 attempts is definitely not close to what they did. They actually had to step
No.
away from the game and come back. But like you said, God of War has a huge amount of replayability. It is a beautiful game. Once you beat it, you can play New Game Plus. I don't know that I'm going to do that because my whole goal is to 100% it. I'm 2 achievements away. I haven't 100%ed a game in a long time. So that tells you I really enjoy this game. But it is beautiful. Highly recommend it. And I watched a documentary of Cory Barlog, like talking about the development of this game. It went through a lot of hurdles. It was not an easy release for them, but they did what was needed. Like Santa Monica Studios delivered a solid product. And I remember at the very end of it, Cory Barlog, he said he was looking at the reviews the next day after the game released, and he was sitting in there crying because of how well received the game was. I mean, it got Game of the Year. That tells you something about the game. And a good game company will realize they have to work hard to make a game that good. It's like a 2-hour documentary, but if you want to watch it, I highly recommend it. It's called Raising Kratos, and it's on Sony's PlayStation YouTube channel. But it is great. And that goes for you two audience if you like, that type of stuff. But that game, I can't gush enough about it. I'm excited to play Ragnarok when it comes out on the PC. But currently I have to wait, so that's that. But
nothing wrong with waiting. Well, I think to your point, we talk. There's a lot of talk out there, and the talk really started to gain ground when Baldur's Gate 3 released and finally went full. There was this realization that no, you can make a good game, and there have been good games. God of War, other assorted titles have been successful. But if you look at each of those successful games, there's a common denominator, and that common denominator is a single player, deep, well thought out, well designed, well written, well open-worlded. Like, it's a game that allows you to do what you want. Games that are linear, games that force you to be on basically train tracks and you're just doing the shooting and it always goes the same way and there's nothing really that you can do to change your path. Those are the games that don't last. Those are the games that people are like, I don't want to play this anymore, and I'm not gonna. So yeah, it's a phenomenon. It's fascinating to watch it. I'm 41 years old, so I've seen the early days of PCs from the early 90s, late 90s into the 2000s, and now I'm seeing it in the 2023s, 2024s. And so it's really interesting to kind of reflect on that body of work and go, wow, what we had then and what we have now and what we had in between. It's a very interesting study of the gaming industry and the direction that it's going, that it's gone, and how it's going to work. So that will definitely be a deeper conversation at some point down the road, I think, that we can have, because there's some history there with gaming companies, and EA has a special place in my heart for what they've done to The Sims 4 and everything like that, and there's a lot of conversations there. But for the last couple of minutes, because we've hit our 52 minutes, which is awesome, and we'll probably go for a little bit more, but we want to introduce the topic of aliens, because next week we're going to dig into this. So obviously the aliens history, we talk about Roswell, we talk about Area 51. There's a lot of mystery, a lot of mythology, a lot of a lot of scuttlebutt out there. There's been documentaries, there's been exposés, there's been all these things. What is continually and routinely interesting to both myself and to others who are professionally involved in the UFO situation is that the United States government has never come out and said it's not aliens. They've just said whatever we do at Area 51 is top secret. It's not like, this is not for your eyes. It's protected. Like, there is security at Area 51 and warnings that if you go to Area 51, there is a 95 to 100% chance if you do try to scale, you're going to get shot. Like, that's going to happen. You're going to die. There was a big deal a couple of years back where it was people were like, we're going to storm Area 51. And it was the dumbest imaginable thing you can think about. And they didn't obviously storm the gates at Area 51 because the government was like, look, you need to understand this is serious. I think because there is that level of seriousness, it's really hard to ignore the fact that there is something at Area 51. Something's there. What it is, No one says. And there's a bunch of like secondhand content or secondhand knowledge or secondhand ideas about what happened in Roswell back in the day, what's happening at Area 51 now. And there's been a lot of conversation recently because there's been a push to declassify a lot of the UFO information and documents. One of the most startling pieces of evidence that nobody is able to refute is there's footage in the last 2 or 3 years that's been released, or been released anonymously, or it's been released by the government, where our fighters are chasing and tracking these balls of light. And they're physical. They're seen on video. They're seen by people's eyes. It's not like it's a hallucination. And they actually move. They react. They engage. They do things. Like, it has been documented. And there's no explanation, because there's no real country aside from us who has the ability or the possibility of creating such technology. And so there's been this big push to, like, what is the answer to this question? Like, what's going on here? And there hasn't been a lot of answers. What they have, that they've put together a UFO commission, they've put together like a research group to dig into the files and figure out what can be released. But I think the startling thing about this situation is there hasn't been a denial that it's, because there hasn't been a denial that it's not aliens, because they can't explain it. Well, okay, if the camera on the fighter plane is recording these balls of light or these objects flying around and interacting, and the pilots are seeing it, well, that's confirmation on two parts. Like, there's no reason not to believe it's happening. But there's been no explanation of what it is, because they have movement, they have mass, they have weight, they're there, and then they're gone. And so there's been a lot of kind of discussion of, it's probably aliens, but what we think of as aliens versus what really is out there, there's a big separation, right? So what we think in science fiction, so this is coming back to our show title, in science fiction, we imagine aliens as humanoid or some kind of shape. And they land, and they either are here to help us, or they're here to trick us and help us, or they're here to kill us all. Like, that's what we think. Independence Day, whatever.
Destroy all humans.
But destroy all humans. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of like aliens, Prometheus, all this stuff. That's their idea of aliens. And the beautiful thing, Star Trek does a great job of this. They have introduced a lot of alien races from the original series, TNG, Enterprise, Discovery, Strange New Worlds, with the Gorn and all that. Like, they've done a great job of showing us what their idea of aliens are. So you've had it, like Andromeda was a great TV series with a lot of aliens. Space 1999. Like, all of these movies and shows have done their take on aliens. Obviously, the name just went on my head. Stargate. Stargate has done a great job of showing us aliens and their interpretation. I wonder if what we think of as aliens is farther from the actual people in front of us, the aliens in front of us. I wonder if the aliens that our reality is more the encounter at Farpoint, where it's a living creature that you can't really communicate with, but it's out there, and it's in the stars, and it's neither passive nor aggressive. It just exists. The theory that I have, so I use this statement a lot. I say, where I sit and where I stand. Where I sit is where I'm thinking, and I don't really have an answer. I'm just thinking through. When I say when I say where I stand is this, that means I'm taking my stand. I'm sitting in this fully all the way. I have nowhere near standing on this subject. But what I sit and think about is, what if it's more encounter at Farpoint than it is of the Klingon Ferengi variety? And what if those balls of light and those things we're seeing and experiencing, that's the aliens, but they neither have no interest in us, they're just kind of around, and they're just in and out and on their way to whatever they're going to next. There's no harm, no foul, no friendly, it's just there. What if that's what the aliens that we think of as aliens actually are? And that's a more terrifying concept, because they've been making their appearances more known and more known, because obviously technology's increased. We have more cameras on planes. But what if they're just showing up more because there's more of them? Or questions that have no answers, but are absolutely things when you sit in and you go, ooh, ooh, oh, like the consequences of that thought process of what could be if we think of aliens beyond what we know and beyond what we imagine. And science fiction can only take us so far. Yeah. To that point, I guess you could almost say, is it more of Encounter in Farpoint and Space 2001? Because that's a trippy experience. If you've ever watched that movie or read the book, it is badonkadonks. But I worry and I wonder if that's more of what the aliens are.
So, on a science side of this, because I'm the science guy. That's what you've deemed me, the science guy.
I've labeled you. You will do your job as told.
Even though I'm science fiction too, I am the science guy, and I'll take that. I've had to do a lot of research lately on Mars for college, for my space studies program, and I've come to learn some things about Mars that I didn't know. I was always posed the question when I was younger. Do you think aliens exist? Do you think extraterrestrials are real? And the universe is vast. It's bigger than we even know that it is. There's so much unexplored space. But Mars, however many years ago, very long time ago, it was proven that Mars had a livable climate on it. Like a breathable, livable climate, like a lush climate, like Earth pretty much, but on Mars. Well, now you look at Mars and it's desolate. It's barren. It's just nothing. But they found signs that something was there. So that right there tells me there's something somewhere. What it is, who knows? Could it be a creature that, like the Encounter at Farpoint type? Sure. Could it be humanoid? We really don't know. I don't know. I can't say, but I do know from just the facts of what I've seen of proof through scientific research, there is proof that something's there. It is. It's there. No matter how you try to refute it. Like, how could Mars be a livable climate and have proof of something, and then now it's all barren? Like, how did that happen? What occurred for that to happen? And the science of the universe is crazy. Like, the fact that the Earth protects us from the radiation of the sun and the weather from the sun. Like, I just learned this, and this could be a topic for later, but like all of the things, like the Aurora Borealis, that amazing, beautiful thing, that is actually space weather from the sun. And if it wasn't for Earth being the way that it is, shielding us from that stuff, it would hurt us. It would harm us. In fact, we would probably not be alive right now if it wasn't for that, for the way the Earth is. So the universe, in all of its vast mysteries, we don't know what happened to Mars. And that's something that NASA they're highly interested in. They've sent many rovers. Currently, the Perseverance or Percy rover is there now, and its entire job is to gather samples that could potentially come back to Earth, but it's looking for those signs of life. Because NASA's like, there was something here. We can't refute this. And, you go back and you said about Area 51. Oh, my goodness. There's been so many stories about Area 51, And it exists. We know it exists. It's a very, very hush-hush place. Like you said, every sign says, like, deadly force will be authorized. So you would never see me even step near Area 51 unless I had the clearance to be in Area 51. And even though I'd probably be terrified, because I'd be like, I can't talk about anything that I'm about to see, and if I did, I'd probably be shot. So, and it could be aliens, it could be top secret military research, it could be, aircrafts that they're developing. We really do not know. It is the Air Force, so it has to do something with air. I mean, Air Force, but you really don't know. And they've kept it that way for a long time, and I figure they're going to continue to keep it that way for a long time. But to refute what you said, there is that scientific side. Something is out there. Now, there could be more than one thing out there. Like you said, those balls of light, the UFOs that people say they see, which sometimes I don't think people see. I think some people are a little nuts, and that's just from personal experiences of things. But there are cases of things that have happened. And I can't refute that that's happened, especially when there's actual proof of it. Like, you can tell, hey, this occurred. So
Yeah.
There is proof out there that something exists, but do we know what it is? No. And
well, and so there's an article that I linked you in our chat where we're talking about stuff we want to talk about. It's from a site called hotair.com. Its site is it's a political site that leans more conservative. I just read it for the information, but they've had an ongoing series that it pops up every so often where they talk about space, or they talk about the aliens, or they talk about whatever. And one of the articles from November 25th, 2023, so just in the last couple of months, the title of the article is "The Universe Isn't Living Up to Our Science Fiction Expectations." And it links to a bunch of articles where, like from the Washington Post and a bunch of other places, where they talk about how we haven't seen anything. We haven't heard anything. We are functionally alone. And I'm going to read to you the quote from the article, but then also what the author says. So one of the quotes from the article says, "The Bible for alien life pessimist is the 2000 book Rare Earth: Why Life Complex is Uncommon in the Universe, or Why Complex Life is Uncommon in the Universe, by Peter D. Ward and Donald E. Brownlee. The controversial book argued that Earth is unusually blessed with conditions that make complex life possible, such as having a giant planet Jupiter in just the right spot to run interference against dangerous comets. Again, Jupiter does a good job. But the book does not argue that there are no aliens out there. Here's where the debate gets subtle," the article says. Ward told the Washington Post that he assumes aliens do exist somewhere in the vast universe, but we'll never know because they're just too far away to make contact. We're not literally alone in his scenario, but we're functionally alone. The chances that there's one close enough to even interact with is vanishingly small. The blog at Hot Air goes on to suggest, as the article notes, it took about 3 billion years for life on Earth to go from single cells to multi-celled animals, and then hundreds of millions or more years to get to intelligence capable of complex language and technology. Life, in terms of single-celled organisms, may not be rare in the universe. There may be green slime growing on rocks in a few places in our own galaxy right now, but the chances of finding someone else to talk to, much less someone who has the technology to travel here and take over the planet, seems pretty unlikely. The aliens, if they're out there, are facing the same problems getting around this massive universe that we are. Even if they want to invade the Earth and make it their own, having the technology and patience to pull that off is not a trivial task. And I think that's the reality that a lot of people are coming around to, that science fiction tells us of the future, and it tells us of the possibilities. Star Trek, the pads, the PADDS that they have in their hands, we have those as tablets now. That future has become. Tricorders are becoming more like you can put something across your head to get your temperature. That didn't happen 20 years ago. You can do a lot of different things that is mirrored in Star Trek, but we don't have warp engines. We have impulse, but there's a fuel like a limit. We don't have a warp core. We don't have an impulse core from which to replenish that energy. So it's a stark reminder of how far we've come, but how not far we've come. We've still got thousands of years to develop what we think of as a starship. Yeah, Elon Musk has the Starship. All these organizations have their ships they're building to go to Mars or go to Earth or go to the moon. But we don't have a warp engine. We don't have the ability to go from here to Andromeda like that. That possibility, I think, is what people kind of struggle with is that science fiction told us this is what was going to be the future. Well, that future is not here. And it's very interesting to kind of sit back and reflect on, there might be aliens out there, but they're going as fast as we are in development to get the technology to get out there. We can go as far as Mars theoretically with a non-manned mission. We haven't even put a manned mission into Mars yet. We're working on it. We're getting there. It's going to happen. But we haven't gotten that far when it comes to the size of the galaxy. To your point earlier, you were saying, look, it's a big galaxy. It's a big universe. There are so much out there. You look in the night sky, all those stars, that's the big, that's the massive, that's how huge it is. So it's kind of one of those things where we kind of have to, realize, that we probably won't get where we want to get, anytime soon. And yes, you just sent me a design from Futurism, which is designed for a warp drive ship. Now, we have a theory, but you talk about space-time and you talk about all that.
So
that's the theory, at least.
Let me pop down through the article here. I'll read this one. So it says, in 1994, physicist Miguel Alcubierre proposed a new kind of technology that would allow us to travel 10 times faster than the speed of light without actually breaking the speed of light. That seems a little contradictory. After all, we've been told time and time again that light is the universal speed limit. Nothing in the cosmos can travel faster than it, much less 10 times faster. Herein lies the key to the Alcubierre drive. When you use it, you aren't actually moving through space. This technology would not actually propel the ship to speeds exceeding light. Instead, it uses the deformation of space-time permitted by general relativity to warp the universe around the vessel. Essentially, when the drive is activated, the spaceship behind expands while in the front it contracts. In the path taken becomes a time-like free fall. So if we fall further down, a NASA physicist named Harold White revealed that he and his team were working on the design for a faster-than-light ship in 2010. They actually have a design of it, which is the picture that you saw. The ship, it says, to give you an idea of just how awesome the technology would be, a trip to the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, which rests some 4 light years from Earth, would ordinarily take over 17,000 years. However, with the Alcubierre drive, it would take a little under 5 months. For those of us who have a mental breakdown on 10-hour plane flights, 5 months might still look like quite a bit of travel time, but when we are talking about the vast cosmic distances between Earth and Proxima Centauri, a 5-month trip would be an achievement of monumental proportions. Keep in mind, it took Curiosity 8 months just to reach Mars.
Yeah. I've seen that. I've seen this particular thing. I think the part of it that is the struggle is that we don't actually have that warp drive built. We have an idea, but it's similar to a lot of theories that we've got ideas on, but to actually test that theory, that you have to put either someone in that test ship or something in there to see what happens. Because yeah, you got to, and I would not be that person. I would not be willing to take that risk. There are people who are like, yeah, let me be the test pup. Let me be the test pilot. Let me do that. Let me take my life in my own hands and take that risk. But for me, I'm just like, no, sir, Bob, not today.
I do think it's funny. The name of this ship that they're going to propose is called the IXS Enterprise.
Yes, I did see that. That does make me laugh. So there you go. There's the aliens kind of overview. Next week we'll dig into some specific stuff. We'll talk about space flight. We'll talk about practical. We'll talk about the impractical. We'll talk about what does the future look like, because when commercial space travel came into being with Virgin, with Elon Musk and his company SpaceX, there was a lot of excitement, but the excitement was tempered with, well, it's not actually commercial space flight. You're going to go up, you're going to orbit, and then you're going to come back down. Like, you're not traveling to the moon yet. You're just kind of in space and doing a little bit of a limited experience, and then you come back down. How that looks in the future of longer trips to certain places, who knows? But right now, I think what we're restrained by is the technology we have access to and the abilities and the engines we have access to at this time. Because right now it's less of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and not even Enterprise. We are still in that pre-period of getting space flight developed and being able to do what we want to do. So there we go. That's your introduction to aliens, and we'll have more next week for sure. Any last thoughts, Stefan?
So yeah, we sprinkle some science in here. Obviously, we talked about warp drives because, of course, we did. You was talking about
yes.
SpaceX. So Elon Musk is doing something that I can understand why he's doing it, but it's kind of crazy. He's buying oil rigs, decommissioned oil rigs, and he's going to make them where they're going to be launch pads for Starship. Because his plan is to colonize Mars, and to do that, he needs a lot of ships. He has a lot of resources heading that way a lot of the time. And if you actually go to if you go to SpaceX's website, you can actually watch a video of what their planned concept of that trip would be. and they're working hard towards it. Starship has developed a lot since it first started. It still has a long ways to go, but it is a ship that it's something to see for sure. And the fact of the matter is, they want to catch that ship, stage 2. They want to catch that back down on Earth with the launch pad. They have chopsticks, is what they call, and they're like arms. They want to land that ship straight back down and catch it in there. I'm very interested to see when they do that. I'm not going to say they can't. I mean, they made a booster land on drone ships in the middle of the ocean, but it's going to take a lot of time. And that's his plan. He's helping NASA get to the moon, but his ultimate goal is Mars, and he's pushing towards it with all available speed that he can. He's already hired people to look into mining stuff for Mars and other planets, and that's another huge thing about space. If we can master getting into space and further out, that companies are going to go mine resources because they're there and they're viable.
Yeah.
And if they can get there, they're going to do it. And we had this conversation in my class, and this is just a little precursor end to this whole thing. But between me and you, Aaron, I'm gonna ask you straight up. Do you think that the amount of money that NASA gets yearly is too much?
No.
Okay.
Question mark.
So people in Congress, but also humans, people that don't understand science, they complain. They complain about the amount of money that NASA's using. They complain about the amount of money, and they don't understand why. They don't understand why they take that money. Well, if you look at your phone, a lot of the technology that comes from your phone came from space. Yeah. And that's what people don't understand. Your medical milestones, that's come from space. It takes money to get to space. We talked about this last week. It is an expensive venture to get to space. But when we were wanting to get to the moon, we didn't care about the cost. It was all hands on deck. All the money, we're doing it. And that's the thing that people need to understand. Exploring space is expensive. Yes. That money it's a lot of money. But to do what needs to be done so that we can get to those achievements, to bigger achievements, to get, better technological advancements, you got to spend that money. And that's probably one of the hardest things that I've had to deal with when it comes to conversations with people. And being as I've taken a class, to learn missions, I know firsthand how NASA budgeting is. Nightmare. It's a nightmare. Exactly. But it's just, and, we were talking about aliens, so to throw that in there, if we want to make ships capable of that, you got to spend money. It's not going to be free. We don't, nothing in America is free. Everything is paid for in some way, capacity. You got to use money. And the space venture, spaceships are expensive. Like the space shuttle, the production of it was like in the billions for just one space shuttle. That's a lot of money. That's more money than me and you can fathom. We don't have that much money, but it's there. Yeah. It exists. And that's just the point of space travel in the space industry. It's expensive. It's not an easy venture, but for us to get to the galaxies we want to explore, past what we know into space that's undiscovered, we got to spend that money. We gotta work for crazy and better things. And even to research, a warp drive, that takes money. It's not a cheap venture, but people say that we as humans are a spacefaring race. Well, if we're a spacefaring race, we need to be able to make sure we can be open to the fact that we got to spend money to get there. It's not cheap. And so I guess that's my ending for the episode, because like you said, with aliens, they're out there, but they're way out there, way past anything we can get to. Yeah. We want something capable to do that. It takes research and lots of time, and we're still far from that point. I mean, our rockets have come a long way since the Saturn V, but we're still way off from the point to travel interstellar space. I mean, the probe, the Voyager probe, Voyager 2, because Voyager 1's inactive now, it's taken years and years and years for it to get to where it's at. So that's the thing, people. You just got to understand that we're not there yet. We want to be like Star Trek, but we're not there, and that's the future. We don't know what the future holds or anything like that, but people are trying. They're trying to get warp drives. They're trying to make that possible because we want to know more about the universe. The universe is an amazing place. I mean, you go and look at pictures from James Webb Telescope and you see the universe. It's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty, and it's unexplored. We don't know what's there. So that's my spiel for the ending, I suppose, just to give a little science poke at the end.
Well, and it's the opening of Star Trek, the original series, and Star Trek: The Next Generation is space, the final frontier, the last opportunity for us to seek out new civilizations and undiscovered stars and all these things, new life and new life civilizations, and it's going to take time. And if we're willing to put in the money and put in the work, it's going to take us more than a couple of generations or a couple of lifetimes to get there. But if our humanity is truly defined by our inquisitive nature of wanting to go to the next step, to the next star, to the next place, to the next planet, to the next edge of the universe, we can't not seek out that future. And is it going to cost some money? Absolutely. But if we are going to validate the fact that there is more to see in the world, in the universe, in the galaxy, then we have to accept the fact that we need to do the thing and put the money in the thing and get the thing up in the air and send it on its way. So that is a fantastic way to end the episode. Until next time, next week will be a full aliens. I'm sure there'll be some conspiracy theories. I'm sure there'll be some fun and frivolity involved, but we're going to take a serious look at this alien thing through a couple of different lenses. So if you're watching now and you have some ideas, or you want us to talk about something specific, you want us to dig into something specific, feel free to comment down below on YouTube. If you're listening on the audio portion, send us an email, adelayedteacher@gmail.com. Again, adelayedteacher@gmail.com. Until next time, my name is Aaron.
And my name is Stefan.
And as Stefan says, clear skies is all we seek, and the final frontier is where we want to go. We'll see you on the next one. Good night, everybody.